We've got a Brunei-born, Brunei-educated entrepreneur, now a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley in the US.
I was a second-year student at UBD. Me and a couple of friends over at university, we put together a quick website. The Groupon model took the world by storm. We kept building, and ultimately, at its peak, we were at maybe 40,000 members. We had delivered a couple $1 million in revenue to small, medium businesses. We've worked with probably 300 or 400 small, medium businesses here in Brunei.
The American business culture is quite cutthroat and quite brutal.
When I was running Viralspace over in Silicon Valley, there were very different sets of challenges. We probably spoke to or pitched 70 or 80 venture capitalists, and no one said yes. And ultimately, we got someone to say, all right, yeah, we'll do 500K, and let's see where this goes. And that's where the thing started snowballing. Yeah, Alan, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be here in person. I know we chatted last year. I was on the screen. It was, it's virtual and stuff like that.
You can imagine how big your face was on the screen.
Totally. Now I see it. So it's great to be breathing the same air and having this conversation live in person. Well, we got plenty of time today. I feel like we can go many different directions. So how far back do we want to go? I think 2008, 2009 would be a good time. We share a common background. In some ways, I went to UBD as well. So 2008, 2009 was my first and second year over at UBD, and also my first exposure to entrepreneurship and startup as a whole. So I'll start there. It was interesting times at that time. I call it the mobile boom, right? 2008, 2009, 2010, we had iPhone 4, iPhone 3. So it was around that time. It felt not very different from what we're feeling today with AI, to be completely honest. Frankly, that's how I feel as an investor now. For me, what got me started at that time was fascination around internet, e-commerce, and online shopping. So I was going through university. There was a time when blogging was popular. So I don't know if, I feel like this crowd remembers blogging, WordPress, blogspot.com, and stuff like that. It was around that time that I got into entrepreneurship. So at one point, there were a lot of activities on blogs from personal side of things. People were putting their diaries, their thoughts, and their analysis on blogs. People were following each other. And then there was a moment in time which was very seminal for me in my sort of personal experience. People started putting things on blogs to sell. They started with apparels, clothes, men apparels, accessories, and stuff like that. I got into that whole movement in some ways completely accidentally. I was a second-year student at UBD. I had been looking for, projects to fill my time, and there was this movement, and Uber just got started. It was starting to blow up. So me and a couple of friends over at university, we put together a quick website. We started putting some stuff on there. It was crazy, to think back. People would make an order. They would receive them a month later. It is unheard of today. You get Amazon same day delivery, Amazon now, within 2 hours over in the US. But back then, takes days, takes weeks. So that was how I got started. I was a university student.
But what was that spark? Why did you want to fill your time? Most students, when I was in UBD, we were very happy not filling our time.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know, probably has to do with upbringing. I didn't come from money, so, we were not super poor, but, we were always thinking money is always top of mind for us. How are we going to pay for education? How are we going to pay for housing and all those questions? So naturally, there was that financial incentive for sure. But I feel like there was something more. I think I enjoy the thrill of creating value out of thin air. That was one. I think my first experience was right around when I was a kid. I don't know how what age I was, but I was going to school. I was collecting Pokemon cards, and every packet you buy, there is a non-zero chance you get a rare card, and that card pays for the entire packet. I go to school. I talk to my friends, and they would offer me cash in return for those rare cards, and I'm like, hey, I just created value out of thin air. I was a hobbyist. I was collecting stuff, but there is value to this thing. I think it started from there. I think a combination of multiple things as well, but that thrill of generating value, creating value, making transactions and trades, and then compounding that. It didn't go anywhere, but eventually that led me down a path of like, hey, constantly thinking about, is there value in my projects, in my actions, or in the networking sessions that I go to? So over time, it builds.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
That you've done something, you've had that experience. It hasn't been that mind-blowing $1 million win, but it's been a building block to future things which you perhaps were not aware of at that time. And so that spirit of, having a go, just trying and seeing what happens. I mean, that's really inspiring.
Yeah, I think one of the things a lot of entrepreneurs, or I'd say most entrepreneurs, come across at some point in their life is they realize they have this innate intellectual curiosity in some ways. They ask questions. They can't stop. Until they solve a certain problem, they push forward. There's some elements of that got built into me as I was a kid. Growing up, it's probably a combination of the people that I met, mentors that I met, the exposures that I've had, the lectures that I've learned from over at UBD as well, and I guess all of it compounds and builds up. So yeah, I guess that's just me. People come from various different backgrounds and ends up taking very different paths, but that's me.
And in UBD, you started a Groupon-style company. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So this is probably circa 2011, I want to say. iPhone 4S, I remember vividly, very clearly.
I like how you benchmark times in your life according to the latest iPhone.
With iPhones. Yeah, so I was still doing the block shop thing. It was gaining momentum and stuff like that. I think at one point we would get, I don't know, like 200 orders per month and stuff. And we were university kids, and we were paying for our own expenses and stuff like that. It was awesome. And then we were creating value. People were getting products in their hands through our site. It was around that time as well. The Groupon model took the world by storm. I think they started in 2008. They went public in 2012. It was around 2011 that I caught wind of the business model. I think it's one of the ways to start something valuable for society or countries at large is by observing what's been working overseas. And for me, it was the right time. It was the right set of skill sets and mindset that I had at that time that prompted me to want to start something like that. I saw how Groupon was changing small medium businesses. I saw how it's affecting mom and pop shops in Singapore, in Malaysia, all over the place. And I look around, we don't have something like that in Brunei. And maybe I should go start it. I feel like at some point someone would start it. And I think it was a combination of that plus my previous ongoing experience on the block shop stuff, selling stuff online. The only thing we didn't have during the block shop era was that I didn't have a payment gateway. I didn't know how to collect, how to get people to pay online. The only way people were doing, I think the only place people were paying online at that time back in 2011 was, booking flights probably. That was probably about it. To transition to the Groupon equivalent, I would need a payment gateway. So that was my big kind of hurdle and barrier or to solve before I get there. But anyway, I was captivated by the business model.
Sorry, I can't resist. The payment gateway in Brunei is coming soon. So hopefully that's going to help a lot of entrepreneurs here in Brunei. But anyway, carry on. I'll speak to that in a little bit. But I was fascinated by the business model. I was drawn to it. I felt like I could do it. So at that time I was third year probably. I put together a couple of resources, tried a couple ideas. I believe we had someone overseas as well working with. This is like 14 years ago. I'm trying to jog my memory. But we had a couple people outside as well, and there were a couple people locally design and stuff like that. And we quickly hacked to go to a website, and it was below $5,000. It was really, really MVP, if you will. Let's build a minimum viable product, put it out there, and see if it works and if people would touch it. Our first deal, I remember. Actually, I don't even remember. I don't remember. I believe it was like boba or something like that. It was like something really, really affordable,
and you get like half off whatsoever. The day we put it up, I was looking at my phone. It was blowing up. It was blowing up. PayPal, we were using PayPal at that time. It was blowing up, and I think that was the moment I realized that, hey, this thing has legs, and it could take off in Brunei. And it started from there. I was a third-year university student, and we kept building. And ultimately, at its peak, we were at maybe 40,000 members. We had delivered a couple $1 million in revenue to small, medium businesses. We've worked with probably 300 or 400 small, medium businesses here in Brunei. It was probably its peak, probably 2013-ish. So all started when I was...
This was at third year university at UBD?
Third year, and then, well, it's funny because ultimately I took a leave of absence for 1.5 years to scale the company. And that was when I got a lot of exposure to the regulatory authorities. We got support from BEDB, from iCentre, etc. So those were great moments, great validation moments as well, but also great resources for us to continue scaling. I eventually went back to University of Brunei Darussalam. I did graduate. I ended up graduating 2 years later, but still got the degree. So anyway.
Fantastic. Well done. I mean, that's a really inspiring story. I sort of think back to my time in UBD. I was doing lots of odd jobs here and there, moonlighting in one station. But that spirit of entrepreneurship. How did you get your friends to help you? I mean, you mentioned the word "we," and it sounds like a huge endeavor. How did you build a team when you were in university?
Yep. No. So at university, you attract some like-minded friends who similarly, has an itch for building things or doing marketing or sourcing supplies or just are good at numbers. And I think university is a good place to be putting together startup founding teams. I did the same when I was at Stanford. My founding team was also going to classes with me. So it was my second time. So my first time doing that was at University of Brunei Darussalam. I think just being able to recognize people's values and skill sets, principles, and being able to inspire and lead the way. I think at that time I wasn't inspiring people too much. It was more like, hey, it was more inspired by doing. So like, hey, I'm really putting in that number of hours. We're building towards this really grand vision. Would you be interested in joining me in doing something like that? I got some people to join me, part-time, full-time, eventually build a team around it. It was very fun. Like it's always my favorite time, call it pre-seed and seed stage of building a startup.
And to do it at UBD, that must have been quite special as well. You're going to class and then afterwards hanging out in the cafeteria and having a chat and brainstorming what you can do. What sort of, I guess, in terms of like marketing strategies did you have? Was it just naturally that the business grew, or did you have to come up with an advertising strategy to promote the offering that you had? Yeah,
you know what they say about build it and they will come? Completely not true. I mean, it works in very, very rare occasions. Mostly you figure out your go-to-market strategy. For us at that time, Facebook was golden. Remember, it was 14 years ago. I don't know what the latest today, like maybe it's TikTok, but every era, there is something to capitalize on, to leverage for go-to-market. And for us back then, it was Facebook. No ads, organic. Instagram wasn't even there. And we had something called the Facebook fan page. It was 100% organic, and you could go viral really, really quickly. For good reasons, don't go viral for the bad reasons. So we capitalized on that for our distribution, and we scaled really, really quickly there. Eventually, that loses its touch because ads came, Instagram came, more channels came, but there's always something. So I think as a startup, it's important to be really scrappy, to be really resourceful, and figuring out, post MVP, how are you going to get it in front of your users, be it consumers or enterprise? There has to be a go-to-market strategy. There is no build it and they will come. Don't rely on that. If you get that, good for you. Build on that if it's organic. You have a product-led strategy. That's what they call it. But otherwise, have your go-to-market strategy figured out, or at least have a plan, and then execute it as you go. See what sticks, and then double down on the ones that work. That is how I would approach it.
back then, now, it's the same.
I'm beginning to wonder, did you actually sleep during your university days, or were you just running on adrenaline and the buzz of getting this business up and running?
I do sleep. I think there's something to be said around being a university student, because frankly, you could sleep less, and also there is a lot less commitment. I wasn't worried about things. I'm worried about today. Now I got kids, and we got house and stuff like that. Back then it was just like I just got books, and I go to classes tomorrow, and that's the only thing I worry about. I have a roof. I'm lucky. I stayed with my parents until after university. I didn't have to worry about much. So it gave me a lot of, I think, more than the number of hours being awake. It's about the amount of mental space or slash mind share you have that you dedicate to the startup. So I had a ton of that at that time. So I was sleeping 7 hours, 8 hours, but I was awake. I was probably dreaming about it. So if that adds to it sometimes in a weird way. And you wake up, you're like, I feel like I made progress because I dreamt about my startup. Anyway.
That's great that you're living, breathing your dream, and running it every day. But there must have been some challenges along the way. I mean, surely you didn't go from this. I've got a great idea, guys. Let's go and conquer the world, and making a ton of money. What were some of the biggest challenges that you had while you were setting things up and getting things going?
Yeah, there's a ton. I can speak to 14 years ago. I can speak to 6 years ago when I was running Viralspace over in Silicon Valley. There were very different sets of challenges. I think back then when I was running the 100% Brunei focused startup, it has to do with market size. I think it was the mindset plus market size. Day one, I was thinking that it would be a Brunei 100% focused startup. If I could go back in time, I would tell myself, hey, day one, you are thinking about pan-Borneo or pan-Southeast Asia, because there was still room to grow into those markets. I spent too much time focusing on one market, and that was a huge mistake. No turning back time. So that was one of the challenges. And I think there were other challenges around founding teams. I was a solo founder back then. I didn't have a CTO. So it's a tech company. It's an e-commerce, but still it's a tech company. So as we think about post-MVP, post-go-to-market, post-product market fit, innovation, R&D, and building on top of that is key. It really separates the startups that last for decades versus startups that runs its course and had to then move on, shut down, whatsoever. We ultimately did not continue the company after 10 years. I feel like if I look back, one of my biggest mistakes is probably not having a co-founder CTO. We were relying on outside resources for the technical piece of it for a tech company, which makes makes no sense, right? In the Bay Area, in Silicon Valley, I had a co-founder and CTO, I had a co-founder and chief product officer, and I was the co-founder and CEO. The three of us, we could go on innovating for the next 5-10 years without running out of steam or engine, and we could catch on every single technology wave. That was how we thought about it, and I think it remains valid even today. So founding team wasn't a challenge for me in Silicon Valley. The challenges and problems were, I feel like, on the other end of the spectrum. You have this huge, humongous market in the US and global. From day one, where do you even begin? You're going to start throwing some spaghettis on the wall.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there
Anyway.
before we jump, because this is getting really interesting. You went from UBD, did you go straight to to Silicon Valley, to Stanford to study? And then when you were doing your MBA in Stanford, what was the genesis of the idea of starting the business?
Yeah, no, totally. So let's do the transition part. This is now circa 2017. 2017 was...
This is iPhone 12?
I think maybe not that far yet.
Not quite
I don't know, like 11-ish or 10. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't do more homework on that. But it was early AI time. It was, anyone in the crowd knows about AlexNet and the deep learning stuff. It was during that time, 2017-ish, when those things were starting to become popular. Self-driving stuff were becoming kind of real. It was that era in terms of kind of tech timeline.
For me, it was about realizing a long-term, like, lifetime dream of studying abroad, but also just like, hey, the Silicon Valley dream was very real for me. I had the opportunity to visit Stanford University, visit Silicon Valley, visit a couple centers like Plug and Play with the support of BEDB, iCentre, and also the U.S. Embassy sent me once. So those early exposure to the ecosystems over there, to the founders and mindset over there were crucial, and I think it came at it was very timely. I was running, the previous company. I was getting exposed to all that. I was thinking constantly about, what I'm doing wrong and what I could do better and stuff like that. And when time comes for me to make the next move, it was pretty clear to me Silicon Valley was the next stop. So I had to get there. But then, marrying that with my lifelong dream of studying abroad and stuff like that, I never had the chance to. I started looking into ways that I can build a landing pod / launch pad for my next act. And Stanford came into the picture. And their MBA is good. They have great resources. It was a 2-year program. I ended up signing for a 2-year plus 1 year. It was a joint degree. I never finished the second one, so anyway.
Well, only really cool tech entrepreneurs drop out of university, right?
Right. That's on my resume. So I technically am a Stanford dropout, but I did graduate the MBA. So that was the goal. That was the plan. 2017 onwards. Let's go there. Let's settle down, get that degree, meet people, maybe get a job somewhere at Google whatsoever, and then build a startup in Silicon Valley. That was the plan. And one summer changed everything. So in between first and second year of MBA programs in the US, you get to do an internship. So I spent that summer over at Google, and Google was setting up their AI-focused venture fund. And then it was 2018. So they had the foresight, so kudos to them. I believe I was their second intern or something like that. That 3 months opened my eyes to the world of venture capitalists, to the world of AI investing in AI startups. I came back my second year at Stanford grad School of Business. I knew it was time. I had met my co-founder, my future co-founder. We were doing class projects together. I had found the idea. It was a different idea than what we ultimately did, but at that time, I thought that was the idea. So all the stars seemed to align, and I think back to my days at UBD and Brunei and my previous startup, and I felt like I've done it before. I did it at University of Brunei Darussalam. I built a company. It's just a different stage, different setting, different idea.
It must have given you some confidence.
Oh yeah.
To say that, guys, I've done this before. I'm going to try this again. Because it must have, can you imagine you're in America, a whole different planet, and trying something new? There'd be a certain level of apprehension.
Yeah, no, totally. I think there were some similarities for sure. They call it psychology of founders or something like that. There were a lot of things that felt similar: the adrenaline rush, the thrill, the concerns, the sort of risk calculating. You're doing some Excel sheet of like, what if this fails? What if we don't raise enough money? Yada yada. What if my co-founder quits and stuff like that? So a lot of that felt very familiar because I had done it before on a much smaller scale, but nevertheless it felt similar. There were things that felt very foreign. Definitely, the audience over there, the customers over there, the recruiting culture over there, the work culture over there, the venture capital. So there were a lot of things that felt very different. But I felt like that was where my my time at Stanford was well spent. It gave me a lot. It covered a lot. I covered a lot of ground over at Stanford, I would say, in that 2 years, in terms of making myself comfortable with all the risk and the unknowns that's to come. So ultimately, I was able to get over the barrier to take the leap of faith, if you will.
And there must, the American business culture is quite cutthroat and quite brutal. How did you face that environment coming from our very nice, peaceful, friendly, that kind of Brunei culture where you're in a very different environment in the US? How did you face, you must have faced some rejection perhaps. How did you sort of get down from being knocked down and then move on?
Yeah, no, totally. I think
Having some amount of resilience helps. Having been a founder before time in the U.S. Has built a certain amount of resilience into me, and that means not being afraid of failing, not being afraid of asking stupid questions, and not being ashamed of rejections. We probably spoke to or pitched 70 or 80 venture capitalists, and no one said yes. And ultimately, we got someone to say, "All right, yeah, we'll do 500K, and let's see where this goes." And that's where the things start snowballing. But
it must be quite depressing to get to the 70th pitch.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Oh, nobody wants this. Are we doing the right thing? How do you get over that mental headspace of let's keep trying, guys?
Yeah, I think conviction is key among the team members, among the co-founders, and conviction around an idea. Why does this feel like our calling, and why do we absolutely have to pursue this for the next 10, 15 years? Even if 100 people say no to funding our startup, like what is that drive behind it? I think every startup team has something different. Maybe it's because someone has spent their entire career in a certain space or area, and they just see the opportunity that's not being capitalized. Maybe it's a team of young developers, believing in their algorithm so much that they went out to build the next, consumer startup, whatsoever. There has to be something that drives that. I think that is the most important thing, the conviction around it, because when we get in front of the VCs, there's no amount of preparation that can get you through the grilling except persistence, conviction, and also a little bit of that Steve Jobs magic around, whatever they call it, reality bending, reality distortion field, whatsoever. That strong belief. There was a phrase they say in Silicon Valley by a famous VC, founder market fit, and also founder future fit. There's two kind of related stuff. I like the founder future fit one because it's, imagine you have a time traveling machine, you travel 10 years ahead of time, you see the future, you travel back in time, you are so sure that is going to be the future that you're going to build it no matter what. Founder future fit, and I think that is key, and the VCs have to see that in the founder. So now I'm a VC, I look back to it, I get why 70 VCs said no to us, but we're grateful that the 71st said yes. It was a lot. It was a lot to digest. Looking into the abyss. There's multiple different ways of describing the feeling. Reid Hoffman has one version, which is feels like jumping off an airplane and building your parachute, or building your plane, jumping off a cliff and building a plane on the way down. And then I think Elon had another version, which is it's like eating glass and staring into the abyss until you finish eating the glass. Some combination of that was how I felt at that time, but we weren't giving up. So that was key. We knew that this is the future. This is how marketers are going to work. Are going to they. Looking back, I think we had the right vision. We were maybe slightly too early. Anyway.
I want you to tell us a little bit about Viralspace and what the actual business is, and then we'll move on to about the challenges of raising funds. But I want to invite the audience here to be part of this conversation and to ask a question. I'd like to invite you to put up your physical hands and stand up, introduce yourself, an opportunity for us to get to know you as well, and ask a question. I guarantee that no one will be rejected, unlike Hiro's pitches here. So please do put up your hand. And if you are a little bit reluctant, there's the QR code on the screen as well. But I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what your challenges are, even if you've got some thoughts. It doesn't have to be a question, even a comment on what we can do here in Brunei. So please do wave vigorously, and we'll get a microphone to you, or I can come down as well. But Hiro, tell me, while we're waiting for the audience to stand up and wave vigorously at us, what is Viralspace? What was the business about?
Yep. So really quickly, this is now 4 to 5 years ago. It's 2018, 2019. I started this when I was at Stanford. So essentially, we were building an AI software solution that would help large consumer brand companies like Philips or Uber or DoorDash, the consumer-facing brands. We would help their marketing teams build their own custom AI models for creative insights and creative intelligence specifically. So imagine, you were to put up an ad on Facebook or TikTok or Snap, the amount of work that, has to go through a Fortune 500 company, thinking about the colors, the objects, the music, the videos, and the product placement and stuff like that. So we help them figure out what the best combination is, what the best next best iteration is, and stuff like that. So that's kind of what we do. In short, we were bringing computer vision and AI technologies to large companies' marketing teams. 2018, 2019, before ChatGPT. So ChatGPT came out 2022, late 2022. I remember we were toying with GPT. So there is a version of it called GPT, not Chat, where you can have an API access to, and you can use it to generate stuff. There was a version from OpenAI called DALL-E, and I remember at that time we were ideating around how we can help our clients generate images, but there were a lot of limitations. At that time, DALL-E was only able to generate like funny-looking avocados. So good times. So basically, in short, that's kind of what Viralspace is about.
But are you a tech guy? Because what did you study in UBD?
So here's where my founder future fit at that time was, hey, I spent all these years back in my home country building an e-commerce company. I was doing all the marketing. I was helping all the small businesses do marketing. I was early on Facebook. I'm like the domain expert when it comes to content, ad spend and stuff like that. It was my pitch to my co-founders, to my VCs, and then there were a combination of, hey, my co-founder being the AI expert, product expert, their respective backgrounds, and kind of on top of it, we were talking to a lot of clients, marketers. We were having calls with them. So there was a lot of foundational building along that. But for me, it was pretty clear. I don't have a tech background. I don't code. I understand a little bit of code. I can work with engineers. I'm at most a product person / marketing / commercial, et cetera, et cetera.
So you're the ideas guy, and bringing everyone together and allocate, I guess, the working with that team to get that overall impact that your company needs.
Yeah, and I think to back that up, for me, it was a domain expertise piece, because my co-founders and our engineering team has absolutely no idea what goes on in the advertising market, in being a marketer, and et cetera. So domain expertise is really, really important. And I think that's what sold for me.
And how do you raise funds? What's the actual process of going to a VC? If we've got some startups here, we've got some entrepreneurs here, some business owners, and they wanted to get funding from a venture capitalist, what does the journey look like?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways. I think typically there is the angel stage, there is a pre-seed, seed, and then Series A onwards towards IPO. I think early stage, or like early stage for me, is right around those four, or angel, seed, pre-seed, Series A, and there's also the accelerator path right around the angel side of things. So accelerators like Y Combinator, Techstars have been expanding rapidly globally. So I have a number of friends from Malaysia, from Indonesia, have gotten into YC, have gotten into Techstars, and they built from there. So that's a good path for folks who are looking to get into the US market, the international market. So consider applying to as many accelerators that you can, because that really helps you. It may be expensive. You may be giving away 5-7% of your startup equity in return for, I don't know, 150K.
So let me stop you there again.
Sure.
Sorry, I have a very bad habit of stopping people because I forget things. I'm very forgetful. How do you value your company to say, okay, I'm going to sell 5%. It's like Dragon's Den. 5% for 150,000. How do you get that figure?
Yep. At the end of the day, it's demand and supply. So it's market. There is different dynamics at play in different regions. So if you go to the US, if you go to Silicon Valley, you're building an AI startup, you're in the hype cycle, premium valuation, you slap an AI on your slide deck, you have a credible AI team, you have the right market,
you're commanding premium valuation. And as long as there is one VC who's willing to pay that valuation, you're worth that valuation because someone's willing to pay for it. Whether there will be follow-on funding who's willing to mark that up is another question. So I think there is a lot of subjectivity and inefficiencies in this market, but such is the nature of a private market, and that's the reason it's private. In terms of, I think from the founder's perspective, how much you choose to value your company also speaks a lot to your conviction and how much you believe in the idea and the team and the potential of the company. Of course, you got to balance that with the region, the number of available VCs who are looking at your market, and the amount, the range of valuation that they're comfortable with. I think a lot of that, the founder kind of have to shoulder them and figure out how much is my company actually worth in this area at this time in this market, and then go out there and start talking to venture capitalists and start raising capital. One tip that I got from one of my mentors a long time ago is that the game is, it is what it is. You got to play the game, but you can warm up to the game, right? You before you go out and raise, you could talk to this VC like, hey, I want to grab coffee with you. I'm not raising right now. I just want to get to know you a little bit more, gain some feedback, get some insights into how you think about the market and my startup, yada, yada. You warm up to the game. By the time you get to the game, you know that this region, this area, this market, this team, my conviction is around, I don't know, X amount of valuation. Then you go to market and you play the game. So anyway, you can always warm up to the game and you don't have to play the game right now. So that's my take.
And how much should a startup consider selling to help get them also get that funding? Because it's your company, it's your baby.
Yep.
How much should we, 50%, 60%, 10%? Is there a magic number?
Yeah, I think there's benchmarks. I think it's all over the place. We've seen companies go public and founders are left with 3%. Sometimes founders are left with 30%, which is the high end of it. So that's the range. So you do the math sort of backwards. I would say angel, seed, and pre-seed expect to give away 1/4 of the company in total. So if you've taken angel money, you're taking pre-seed money, you're taking seed money, or if you choose to do all that in one big round, 20-25% of the company, you're giving out, and you own the remaining of it among you and your co-founding team, and then your employees with stock options and stuff like that. And then every subsequent round, which is Series A, Series B, Series C, right around 20-25%. On the balance, which is there's some dilution happening along the way, but like expect to give away 20-25% of equity every legit round. So your stake starts from 50% whatsoever. After every round, it gets smaller. Ultimately, the goal is to build a bigger pie worth billions or trillions, if you will, and have everyone win from the race. So that's the idea behind venture capitalists. It's like rocket fuel, if you will. So if you're not trying to, if you don't need rocket fuel, don't get rocket fuel.
And do you have to pay out the profits every year, or are some venture capitalists happy to put a stake in and let the company grow and not have to have that annual payout from profits?
If you're a venture capitalist or if you're an angel investor playing the venture game, you're not looking to take out any profits for the next 10 years, 15 years. So everyone's looking at the IPO liquidity event. That's the default mindset.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a fantastic conversation with Hiro. I've learned a huge amount. We've talked about resilience. We've talked about the importance of planning. We've talked about revenue streams. We've talked about marketing strategies. But the most important lesson that I will be taking away from today, Hiro, is the passion that you had as a UBD student, waking up every day and wanting to have a go, dreaming of trying and aspiring to be that business or to achieve that business goal, which you lived and slept and worked on while you were at UBD. So from one UBD alumni to another, thank you so much for joining us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking and giving a huge round of applause for our Brunei boy in Silicon Valley, Hiro Tien. Thank you, Hiro.
Thanks for having me.